Good morning, everybody. Today we'll be discussing the wound healing, and management. This is your 15th online lecture in general surgery. A wound is an injury, especially one in which the skin or another external surface is torn, pierced, cut, or otherwise broken. In literal terms, a wound is defined as an injury to the body. However, the word can apply to other situations besides bodily harm. Uh, like wounding the soul and other ways of using the word wound. But in surgery, it is where the skin or another external surface is torn or injured. There are various types of wounds. Abrasions are where basically the skin is scraped off because of friction, like falling off a bicycle and abrading your knee. Bruises and contusions are the blue discoloration seen after an injury under an intact skin or around a wound. These are called bruises. Lacerations are irregular, jagged wounds caused by tearing the skin because of non-sharp objects. Incised wounds are wounds sustained after being cut by a sharp object, which can be glass or a knife or a metal edge. Bites, animal bites, and human bites are an entirely different type of a wound. And then you have puncture wounds, which can be because of a stiletto knife, pointed ice pick, or even a thorn, wooden thorn of a tree. Rank and Wakefield classified the wounds into tidy wounds and untidy wounds from management point of view. However, the wounds can be divided by mechanism of injury into bruise or a contusion or a hematoma. Uh, Basically, blunt trauma to the skin causes bleeding under the skin in the soft tissue, subcutaneous plane, or the muscle plane, and that bleeding that takes place inside later becomes visible on the skin in the form of a bruise. A collection of blood under the skin is called a hematoma, and both bruise and hematoma can result after a contusion injury. Puncture wounds and bites, as the name indicates, are because of a sharp structure, whether it is the teeth or a knife or some other metal object piercing the skin. The deciding point whether to label it a puncture wound or to call it a laceration is that the depth of the wound is more than the actual puncture through the skin. Abrasions and friction burns, as I said earlier, like falling off a bicycle and scraping your knee on the concrete, and gives rise to abrasions. And if the abrasion is persistent, for example, a person is dragged behind a vehicle, then this because of the heat generated because of this friction, patient also sustains friction burns in the area. Laceration is a jagged wound in the skin caused by non-sharp objects, and incisions and lacerations have lengths which are greater than their depth. Traction and avulsion injury is sustained when a limb or a part of a limb is caught between fast moving objects which grasp the skin and tear it and avulse it from the limb. Such injuries are seen either with the belt of a moving tube well or the avulsion injury sustained after a ring gets stuck on a structure while the patient falls and degloving of the skin from the finger takes place. So that would be an avulsion injury. Then there are crush injuries, roadside accidents, falls from height, um, lead to crushing of the tissue. Blunt trauma also causes crushing of the tissue, and this may or may not be accompanied by lacerations, and but is usually accompanied by deep tissue trauma and fractures. So the tidy wounds are the ones which are inflicted by sharp instruments, and usually they contain no devitalized tissue because it is a sharp clean cut, and generally they can be closed primarily, um and underlying fractures are uncommon. Untidy wounds usually result from crushing, tearing, avulsion, vascular injury, or burns. They contain devitalized tissue. Devitalized tissue is tissue which is deprived of its blood supply. Uh, may of course contain foreign material like dirt, grit, or parts of the clothing of the patient, um, bullets, shrapnel, that sort of thing. Skin wounds are often multiple and irregular in untidy wounds, because in crush injuries the skin tears in different places. Uh, General principle is that untidy wounds must not be closed primarily, because you can never be sure about the devitalized tissue inside, about the injection of infecting organisms from the roadside, and usually underlying fractures are also common. In rare incidences where you are sure that you can convert an untidy wound into a tidy wound after debridement and wound toilet, uh, parts of the wound may of course be closed. As we have discussed previously, operative wounds can be classified into clean, clean contaminated, contaminated, uh, and dirty or infected wounds. Clean wounds are generally elective surgery wounds. They are primarily closed and without a drain. Uh, no hollow viscus is opened so that the contents of the gut are not spilled into the wound. No break in asepsis, meaning that your aseptic technique, application of iodine, wound washing, skin washing, uh, that has not been breached. Infection rate in clean cases ranges from 1 to 2%. Clean contaminated cases, the hollow viscera are opened or have been punctured because of the trauma, and there is minimal spillage, which after lavage you are sure that has been mopped up. Uh, in such cases, these wounds can be treated as a clean contaminated wound, and if closure is going to be done, then mechanical drains must be left inside to make sure that in case pus forms afterwards, it has a way to drain out. Infection rate in clean contaminated cases is generally less than 10%. Contaminated cases are open, fresh traumatic wounds. Either there is uh, cross contamination with the foreign material from the roadside and clothing of the patient, or there is gross spillage from the gut and feculent or fecal matter is spilled into the wound. Uh, in such cases, there is a major break in the aseptic technique, your A sepsis is broken, and the wound infection rate in such cases is from 15 to 20%. Then there are dirty infected wounds. These are traumatic wounds with retained devitalized tissue, foreign bodies, fecal contamination, or patients who present late to after the injury. There's a perforated viscus with ongoing leakage from it, and acute bacterial inflammation with pus formation has already taken place. So this is a dirty infected wound. These wounds are generally debrided and washed and left open. Infection rate in such cases is expected around 40%. Here you see different types of wounds. Jagged laceration. These pictures are from the 2005 earthquake victims. Uh, you can see that this eyebrow is higher than the other one, so that means there is discontinuity in the skin. So this is a deep laceration, and surrounding it you can see the bruising and swelling around the eye. Another dirty wound, devitalized skin, crush injury. Devitalized skin which has eroded after a crush injury or an avulsion injury. Then there are, other than the acute wounds, there are chronic wounds. Usually these present in the form of ulcers. An ulcer is a breach in an epithelial surface, whether it is on the outside on the skin or inside on the inner lining of the gut. It is called an ulcer. Then there are another variety of chronic wounds which are pressure sores. These are chronic wounds which follow tissue necrosis after pressure. We discussed in the last lecture in detail. Here you see further examples of the crush injuries sustained after the 2005 earthquake. External fixator has been used to fix the fractured bones inside, and the wound is now accessible for dressings and lavage. Here you see another example. These black skin is the one which is devitalized and will soon necrose off, and the wound will increase in size, or they can be surgically removed before skin grafting. Another example of a granulating wound. This is also another example of a wound which is now granulating, and soon it will be suitable for skin grafting. External fixators have been used here also to fix the underlying fracture of the tibia. Here is another dirty wound. You can see in devitalized tissue in the depths of the wound. This wound will need further debridement and cleaning before it can start granulating and healing. Crush injury, multiple bruises, the whole of the leg is contused and bruised, and this area here appears to be devitalized skin. Once all the external foreign matter and the is washed off, then the picture will become further clear. So wound healing is a complex, dynamic process, uh, intricate process, with the ultimate result being repair of a tissue defect. It is the summation of several processes which follow injury. Where wound edges are apposed, apposed means approximated or primarily sutured, healing proceeds rapidly to closure of the wound, and this is called healing by first intention or primary healing. Where the wound edges are left apart because of tissue loss, healing is slow and by granulation tissue formation, and this is called healing by second intention or secondary healing. Healing by primary intention. Types of healing. Healing by primary intention takes place in clean contaminated wounds after the wound edges have been approximated. Healing by secondary intention takes place in contaminated and dirty wounds, and these heal by granulation, tissue formation, and later epithelialization. The healing by secondary intention then, of course, takes place in wounds which have been left open after debridement. Healing by tertiary or third intention, heavily contaminated wounds are left open, and regular debridement, wound toilet, and dressings are done until the granulation is formed. Once the granulation has formed and the wound appears healthy at some later stage, they can then be closed either with sutures called secondary suturing or delayed primary closure, or skin grafts or rotation flaps may be used to cover the wound. This is called healing by tertiary or third intention. Here is an example of healing by primary intention. Devitalized tissue is seen here in this wound. Uh, this devitalized tissue has been excised cleanly, leaving behind a clean incised wound with healthy base. This is then has been primarily sutured and healed, and you just see a small scar. So healing by primary intention is where the skin edges are brought together and the wound heals by primary intention. Epithelialization is rapid because it just has to cross this line from one side to the other to unite with the other side. There is less connective tissue deposition, therefore there is less scar tissue. However, any wound will contract from end to end by about 20%, and this becomes important when you have linear longitudinal wounds on the flexor surface of a joint. Extensor side wounds generally you can get away with, but flexor side wounds uh, contraction can lead to deformity and restricted movement. The process of wound healing contains multiple steps, which we will be discussing in detail. Uh, the initial wound or injury or trauma leads to bleeding and then platelet aggregation at the bleeding point, which leads to coagulation and tries to stop the bleeding. These platelets then release many cytokines, which lead to inflammation, and the cells are attracted to the injury place. Fibroblasts and angioblasts come in, and angiogenesis, new capillaries start forming. Uh, Proteoglycan synthesis and collagen deposition takes place, and all this constitutes granulation, tissue formation, angiogenesis, proteoglycan synthesis, and collagen deposition. Once the granulation has taken place, then the surface epithelialization takes place, and the wound is healed, or leaving behind a scar. And then over the next 1 year or so, remodeling of the scar and scar contracture takes place. So tissue injury leads to coagulation and platelet aggregation. Then they release cytokines, bringing in the lymphocytes and macrophages. We debride the dead tissue, increase the resistance of the wound to the infection. Fibroblasts are also called in, and they then lead to proteoglycan synthesis. Lymphocytes and macrophages will do collagen lysis and eat up the dead tissue. Collagen synthesis takes place, new vascular growth comes in, and new vessels growing into the wound bring in healthy new lymphocytes, macrophages, fibroblasts, platelets. Ultimately, the collagen lysis, collagen synthesis, proteoglycan synthesis leads to healing of the wound with epithelialization. This then is followed by remodeling, which also encompasses collagen lysis and collagen synthesis over a long period of time after the healing. The main elements of healing are granulation tissue and connective tissue formation. This is the process by which main body of the wound is united or the cavity is filled. Epithelialization is the process by which the surface covering of the wound is restored, and then ultimately contraction or remodeling. It is the process by which edge of an open wound gradually come together, and this continues even after the wound has been epithelialized and heals and leads to scar contracture. This is an important graph. Here you see the time days after wounding, and this is the maximum inflammatory and tissue healing response. The first step in wound healing is inflammation, bleeding, coagulation, platelet activation, complement activation, and the body is trying to stop the bleeding and to call in reinforcements in the form of granulocytes and phagocytes, and macrophages and cytokines are all working together. So this generally ranges from immediately after the wound injury up to day 10, with peak coming around 24 to 20 to 24 hours after injury. The second phase of wound healing is cell proliferation and matrix deposition. There is fibroplasia, angiogenesis, reepithelialization, extracellular matrix synthesis. This generally starts at 1 day after injury and continues generally up to 30 days after the injury, peaking at around 7 days. Then the third and last phase of wound healing is matrix remodeling. There is extracellular matrix synthesis, degradation of the devitalized tissue, uh, remodeling. There is ultimately the objective is to increase the tensile strength, cellularity, and vascularity slowly after the wound has healed. The granulation, which is composed of generally a bunch of capillaries. Slowly, the cellularity and the vascularity decreases over time. This process generally starts at around 7 days, and most of the work is done by the 100th day after injury. That is about 3 months and 10 days. But this remodeling continues almost for an year. Slowly, the cellularity and vascularity keeps coming down, and the wound scar becomes mature. So, the cytokine mediators which are involved in wound healing are phospholipid A and prostaglandins, interleukin 1 and platelet derived growth factor, transformin growth factor beta, and epidermal growth factor. Most of these are secreted by the cellular component that comes into a wound after the inflammation process has started. So, what are the factors which promote wound healing? Age factor, younger people heal well because their bodily functions are efficient. Old age is bad prognostic factor. Good local blood supply, if the wound depths and the wound edges are not devitalized of their blood supply, which happens in crush and avulsion injuries, then the wound healing takes place normally. No comorbidities means the patient is healthy without diabetes, uremia, anemia, and other problems which can lead to delayed wound healing. Good general health, good nutrition, state of nutrition, good blood supply, all are encompassed in the general health. Infection-free wound, clean wounds, of course, heal better. Good nutrition, vitamins, essential vitamins, and minerals, um plus energy, calorie intake helps in wound healing. Protein intake, as proteins are required for the proteoglycan and collagen synthesis. Zinc and vitamin C have been shown to improve wound healing in patients. Then there are factors which delay wound healing. Old age, as I have discussed, the arteries are atherosclerotic, the inflammation and angiogenesis is slower. Um, Therefore, the wound healing is slower in old age. Sepsis or wound infection, of course, the bacteria are eating away at the tissue and not allowing the macrophages and the fibroblasts to survive in the septic environment. Therefore, wound healing is vastly delayed. In immunocompromised states, the immune response or the inflammatory response is compromised. Therefore, cellular and antibody immunity is compromised, and infection supersedes the inflammation. Therefore, wound healing is delayed. Then there are metabolic disorders like diabetes, certain drugs, immune modulating drugs, steroids, jaundice, anemia, nicotine intake, cytotoxic drugs, uremia, etc. All these lead to metabolic derangement of the homeostasis in the body, and all of them lead to delayed wound healing. Malignancy, of course, because of the malignant cells are avid for energy, and um, they take away most of the energy that has been ingested by the patient. So there is not enough energy available for the uh, any wound healing. Um, if the wound is related to a malignancy, then of course the malignancy is eating away all the healing that the body is trying to do. Anemia, of course, means that there is decreased oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, and therefore the wound is more susceptible to infection and wound healing is delayed. So, among the factors which delay wound healing, there are local factors also. Wound infection, the presence of necrotic tissue. Necrotic is dying or dead tissue, which is devitalized of its blood supply. Foreign bodies like dirt, dust, infected shrapnel, wood pieces, splinters. Poor surgical technique refers to either poor lavage or poor debridement or closure under tension, uh, leaving a dead space inside. So, poor surgical technique is also an important factor. Tissue tension, tissue disruption, and radiation um, all lead to decreased blood supply and oxygen supply to the wound edges, and wound healing is delayed. So, how do you assess a wound? First, you must assess the mode of injury. That is obvious from the history of the patient. Then you have to take into account the time of injury, when the injury took place, how long has it been. Then you have to look at what type of a wound it is. Is it a puncture wound or an abrasion or a laceration or a incised wound? The location is important because that tells you the vital organs, viscera or the blood vessels or nerves which are located deep to it. Shape of the wound decides how you whether you can or cannot close it primarily. Depth and direction of the wound needs to be assessed, and all the track has to be explored to see or remove foreign material and dead or necrotic tissue. Potential foreign bodies must always be taken into account, and if required, X-rays or CT scans can help. Then potential underlying structural injury must always be assessed in deep wounds. For example, tendons may be cut, nerves may be injured, or blood vessels may be cut, devitalizing the extremity distal to the wound. And underlying structural injury must always be assessed when you are looking at a wound. The basic principles of wound management include assessment of the wound, as we discussed in the last slide, then hemostasis, meaning stopping the hemorrhage, adequate analgesia, then wound debridement, closure, dressings, infection prevention, and regular follow-up. So these are the basic principles or steps in a management of wound. Skin, as we know, is a protective layer outside the body, and it prevents fluid loss, evaporation of body fluids, and it also prevents invasion by bacteria. So, whenever you have a wound, the body armor, the skin has been breached, and now infections can enter, and fluid loss and dehydration of the wound surface can take place. In burns, the fluid loss is so important that it can actually dehydrate and kill the patient because a large surface area is lost. Aim always for precise primary closure wherever possible. Uh, that, of course, is a qualified statement where it is possible only or indicated. Remove blood, dirt, and foreign bodies. Blood, as you know, is used in the lab as blood agar or chocolate agar. Um then there is Robertson cooked meat medium for anaerobic organisms. So all of these dead devitalized tissue and blood is a good culture medium for bacterial growth. And in wounds which are contaminated, leaving these inside will promote wound infection. Remove all devitalized tissue. Devitalized tissue is muscles, fascia, skin that has been uh, de- uh, deprived of its blood supply. So once any living organism is deprived of its blood supply, it is a devitalized tissue and it is going to die and become necrotic, and that necrotic flesh will act as a culture medium for bacterial infection. And one of the basic principles is do not close doubtful wounds. Where you have doubts about contamination or dead or devitalized tissue still being present inside the wound, it's better to leave the wound open and do dressings over the next few days and assess the wound before you decide to close it. So the timing of closure, a wound is closed primarily if the closure occurs within hours after a wound has been sustained. So generally it would be as soon as possible after sustaining a wound, uh, preferably within 2 hours but up to 6 hours after injury. Delayed primary closure occurs within a week of the wound occurring. And in the last slide, as we discussed, where you are suspecting contamination of the wound, suspecting devitalized tissue or foreign material in the depths of the wound, which cannot be removed, because it has impregnated in the form of small dust particles or gunpowder into the muscle. Uh, there you leave the wound open and continue with dressings and antibiotics. And once after 4 or 5 days, once you think that wound is clinically clean, then you can go ahead and close the wound. So this would be delayed primary closure, where you have delayed the primary closure of the wound. Uh, this can also apply to wounds which present to you after 8 to 12 hours. Secondary closure is repair at any time after the first week. In dirty wounds which require large gaping wounds which require a month or months of dressings before granulation is able to grow into it and fill the cavity. That would be a secondary closure. Uh, any closure that is done after 1 week of the wound sustenance is called a secondary closure. Here, I would like to point out the difference between closure timing and healing intention. Do not confuse timing of closure with healing intention. For example, a wound closed by delayed primary closure would heal by primary intention. You delayed the primary closure by for about 5 to 6 days to make sure that the wound is not grossly infected, and then you close it and approximate the wound edges, so that wound will heal by primary intention, although it is closed with a delayed primary closure. So timing of closure and healing intention are two different things. All closed wounds, irrespective of timing of closure, should heal by primary intention. Wherever you have been successful in opposing the wound edges, that will heal by primary intention. Only wounds that are not repaired or closed, they heal by secondary intention. Failed repairs then heal by tertiary intention, where you debride again and then you opt for grafting or flaps rotation. So, in the healing process, hemostasis is the first step. This may be spontaneous, however, it may require pressure, elevation, tourniquet, clamp, or suture for arterial bleeders. Uh, you have to stop the bleeding to prevent the patient becoming hypovolemic or anemic and then compromising on the wound healing. Then you have to give some form of anesthesia, otherwise your exploration of the wound to remove all devitalized and foreign material will be inadequate. So in small wounds you can do local anesthesia, or you can use regional anesthesia like nerve blocks or Bayer block in the arm, brachial plexus block, uh, and, uh, and then go ahead and do your wound toilet and debridement. And in larger injuries, general anesthesia is required. So wound toilet and debridement, this is the most important step in wound management. This is where the surgeon comes in. Uh, all dead necrotic tissue, hematoma is collection of blood or blood clot inside a wound, foreign bodies, dirt, etc. must be thoroughly washed. Washing of the wound is wound lavage or wound toilet, and dissecting away any dead and necrotic tissue or cutting away highly soiled muscle or fascia is debridement. So wound toilet and debridement both are required in most of the wounds before you can think about closing that wound. Uh, Skin preparation and wound toilet. Alcohol or Dettol or detergents are supposed to be used over intact skin. Here too, Dettol must be diluted before it is applied over the skin because it comes in a commercial concentrated pack. So it must be diluted with water before it is applied over intact skin. Therefore, you must never apply alcohol, Dettol, or detergents inside a wound because these chemical uh, ingredients will be absorbed through the granulation or the wound edges on the subcutaneous tissue and the muscle and lead to poisoning of the patient or poisoning of the wound. These alcohol and Dettol can actually cause burns, chemical burns in the wound. Tap water has been shown to have as low or lower infection rates as prophylactic antiseptic solutions. Therefore, antiseptic solution use is not recommended inside a wound. Even if it is used, it has to be very, very dilute form. And the usual compromise is to use sterile saline. So generally, the wounds are irrigated. Instead of using tap water, you want to use sterile normal saline, isotonic saline to copiously wash out a wound. Specific measures in wound closure are abbreviated in the word cleansed. Clean the wound, lavage or wound toilet, evacuate hematoma, any blood clots and blood, antibiotic and anti-tetanus cover, necrotic tissue removal, skin cover, easy closure without tension. This is also very important. Drain and dead space obliteration. This is important, especially in maxillofacial surgeries. You will see dead space left behind, and the surgeon will usually use drains in such cases to obliterate collection of serous fluid or seroma or blood in this dead space, which may then become infected. Wound needs to be irrigated under pressure with an isotonic solution such as saline. A 10 ml syringe with a 18 to 20 gauge soft cannula or 8 to 10 gauge nasogastric tube attached to a syringe may be used to flush the wounds. I don't recommend using needles because accidentally, if the needle touches the soft tissue, you can inject your saline or diluted antiseptic solution into the muscle or the subcutaneous tissue, which can lead to poisoning. Remember the old saying, dilution is the solution to pollution. If a wound is polluted, then thorough washing will dilute the foreign material and the bacteria in the wound, and that may actually allow the body's own defense mechanisms to take over and counter the potential wound infection. So, in any wound, always evacuate the hematoma or collection of blood, except, like I said in the last lecture, in case of fractures, you don't want to evacuate a fracture hematoma unless it is obviously contaminated. In all other wounds, you remove the blood and obtain hemostasis. Here you see a bipolar diathermy being used to coagulate the bleeding vessel, and hematoma has been evacuated. This lead hand you see is used in such surgeries to keep the hand opened up under anesthesia. Infection prophylaxis, of course, you have to start antibiotics immediately on receiving the patient in the hospital or your clinic. These antibiotics can be in the form of a IV shot given immediately, and then followed up with oral antibiotics, or it can be continued in the form of IV. In wounds where you expect multiple organisms or multiple varieties of microorganisms to have potentially infected the wound, uh, combinations of broad spectrum antibiotics are used, which cover gram positive, gram negative, and anaerobic organisms to prevent synergistic gangrene and necrotizing fasciitis. Anti-tetanus cover all puncture wounds and all deep wounds where foreign material has gone in must receive anti-tetanus cover. If the patient has not been vaccinated previously, then anti-tetanus immunoglobulin also needs to be given around the wound. But if the patient was vaccinated within the last 5 years, then you don't need to repeat the tetanus injection. However, if the patient was vaccinated more than 5 years ago, then anti-tetanus booster must be given. Necrotic tissue has been cleanly excised, as we have seen. This is the excised specimen, and this wound can then be primarily closed. Uh, Necrotic tissue is a good culture medium for anaerobic organisms and gram-negative organisms, and leaving that inside is a potential disaster. Skin cover. We are discussing wound management. This is the next step. The best dressing is the patient's skin, whether the wound be closed directly or by skin graft or a skin rotation flap or advancement flap. So basically, the patient's own skin is the best cover for any wound. Early cover means early healing and potential avoidance of infection and bad scarring. Uh, the longer it takes to heal, the more the granulation tissue and collagen and scar tissue is deposited into a wound. Uh, the more scarring there will be, and there will be more wound contracture afterwards and deformity. Here you see skin cover being given. A partial thickness graft has been applied to relieve the contracture here and in this burns patient, because the any scar on the flexor aspect of any part of the body contracts and leads to deformity and limited movements. Here you see that the neck is now extended, able to extend after this area has been grafted. This is the same patient, and here you see the healing and the potential scarring has been avoided, and potential scarring and contracture has been avoided. Partial thickness, meshed grafts healed. Here you see another wound covered with partial thickness skin graft in the arm. Again, it is the flexor aspect, cleft lip, partial thickness grafts. So these generally um, become part of the healing in the form of a delayed primary closure or by secondary closure at a later stage. Here you see a VY-plasty being done to cover the wound. There are multiple varieties of wound flaps, rotation flaps, advancement flaps, and Z-plasties and VY-plasties, which can be done to advance the skin and cover wounds. Another important point in wound management: tension in the wound closure. Be aware of closing wounds under tension. Why? Because tension leads to compression of the blood capillaries in the wound edges, and the wound edges become devitalized, deprived of their oxygen supply, and then that leads to wound sloughing of the wound edges, and the wound may then dehisce. Dehisce means gape again. The primary closure will dehisce, and the two edges will come away from each other because the stitches will come out. The only a healthy tissue can sustain the sutures. Dead tissue or necrosed tissue, the stitch is cut through and the wound opens up again. There is a potential for a bad scar formation. Either it will be a hypertrophic scar or a keloid or a stretched broad scar in such wounds if closure is done under tension. Sometimes it's better to use a flap or a skin graft to close a wound instead of closing it under tension. A surgeon with experience will see whether he is able to close a wound with some amount of tension is okay, but it should not deprive the wound edges of their blood supply and deoxygenate them. Otherwise, that wound will never heal. Here you see basal cell carcinoma has been excised, and now if the surgeon tries to bring these edges together, the skin will be under such great tension that it is likely that the stitches will cut out and the wound edges will slough and this will become infected. At the moment, this is cleanly excised wound, and what the surgeon has done is that he has isolated this skin island. This skin island is getting its blood supply from, it is still attached to the subcutaneous tissue and to its blood supply on its deeper surface. But because subcutaneous tissue can be mobilized, the surgeon is taking the skin island to close the defect here, advancing this, and after having closed this, the lower edge of the wound has been closed by primary closure. So this is one example of closing such a wound without tension. Drains and dead space obliteration, a very important point. Wherever you are leaving behind dead space, it will fill up with blood or serous fluid, which is an ideal culture medium. Dead space is if you have skin or subcutaneous tissue on the one side and deep fascia or muscle on the other side, and there's a big gap in between because they have been separated from each other. If you leave such a dead space in between the two layers of the wound, it is likely that the blood which oozes into this space or the serous fluid from the debrided surfaces of the wound will accumulate, and as we know, blood and serous material is an ideal culture medium. So your all your surgery will go waste because the wound will become infected and this will turn into an abscess. So either you have to obliterate this dead space by applying quilting sutures, meaning sutures being applied on the inside of the wound between the deeper layer and the superficial layer at short distances, so that the overlying layer is now closely approximated, not just at the wound edges, but the whole surface or under surface of the skin is now closely approximated the wound to the raw area. Or you can obliterate this by leaving in a suction drain or open drain, so that any blood or serous fluid which oozes into the wound will be drained. so that the healthy tissue can or in granulations can grow across the uh, from the two wound edges or wound surfaces and heal the wound. If you don't drain such a wound, you can close part of the wound and bring out the drain from the one part in open drainage, or you can use a suction drain and bring it out through a separate stap incision. Uh, in either case, the objective is that no blood or serous fluid should accumulate inside and should not separate the two raw surfaces of the wound, the undersurface of the skin and the outer surface of the muscle and fascia. Only then the two layers will heal to each other. So closure of tidy wound should be closed primarily. All damaged structures should be repaired. Monofilament materials are better because they're less traumatic, they cause less scarring, and they have less potential of getting infected. Here, Prolene has been used. Small stitches of Prolene have been used to approximate the wound primarily. Untidy wounds should only be closed primarily if they can be converted to a tidy wound with wound lavage and debridement. Doubtful tissue must be meticulously but ruthlessly excised. Skin, muscle is ruthlessly excised, but you always try to protect major blood vessels and nerves. Uh, Skin, deep fascia, and muscle can be ruthlessly excised in debridement. Copious lavage dilution is the solution to pollution, so you must try to wash the wound again and again repetitively during your debridement process so that no foreign material or infective organisms are left inside. If you are still in doubt, in case of an untidy wound, don't close. Leave the wound open, you can pack the wound, and then every 48 hours you can remove the pack, wash the wound again, and see for signs of infection. And if at 4 to 5 days you see that the wound is not getting infected, you can then go for a delayed primary closure. So, in summary, all wounds have etiologies. In assessment of the wound we discussed, and nature of the injury must be understood so that you understand the potential consequences of that injury, and at least you should know what you're dealing with, what to expect in such an injury. All acute open wounds need to be explored thoroughly. And of course, you don't want a howling patient, you don't want to add to the misery of the patient. So you must do it under some form of anesthesia. Wound exploration should be done under some form of anesthesia, whether it is local, regional, or general anesthesia. Be meticulous with your wound management, wound debridement, wound lavage, closure, without tension, antibiotics, anti-tetanus cover, choice of antibiotics, combinations of antibiotics, choice of the dressing, all of these, and the period interval between your dressings, all these come under your meticulous wound management. Always be highly critical of your results and strive to get better at it. Each wound that you manage must leave you more experienced and better able to handle a future injury. So, with that, we come to the conclusion of today's lecture. And this was your 15th lecture. Today, we discussed wounds, wound healing, and management. Thank you very much. See you next Wednesday with your next lecture.